A drunken man finds himself lost in a graveyard on a cold night. He sits on a gravestone, pondering his miserable life in the village, when he notices that the gravestones are moving by themselves. The next day, a young woman arrives in the village by truck, and the driver warns her not to go into the mountains. Meanwhile, the drunken man tells the police what he saw in the cemetery, but they dismiss it as the work of vandals. However, the drunkard insists that he saw someone digging up the graves and heard them muttering the name John. The police notice an empty grave belonging to a man named John Schillen and realize that the matter is more serious than they initially thought. They call the grandson of the John family, and soon after, the woman claiming to be the granddaughter of John Schillen arrives. The police are suspicious of her identity, so she shows them her ID with the name Feng Baobao. In the evening, John Solon arrives at the village where he is welcomed by a friend who teases him. Solon visits the police station but is surprised to know that his grandfather's grave is missing. The inspector adds that he encountered a girl by the name of Feng Baobao, who claimed to be his stepsister. Later at night, Solon heads to his grandfather's grave alone. Along the way, he hears the sound of digging, so he hurries to the site only to find a girl. He decides to secretly take a photo of her, but at that moment she notices him, so he quickly runs away from the scene. Just when Solon thinks he successfully escaped, she catches up and knocks him out with a shovel. Sometime later, Solon wakes up only to find Baobao fighting a zombie. Baobao then drags him into an empty grave to be buried as he is in her way. Solon realizes that she is the girl inspector speaking about, so he tries to use a friendly approach to her. However, Baobao reveals that the ID she used was fake and begins burying him alive. He begs her to stop, and when she finally does, Solon comes out of the grave to find her battling a group of zombies. He freaks out after seeing her insane abilities and power, so he hides. While Baobao is fighting the zombies alone, Solon is almost attacked by one of them. However, instead of defending himself, Solon starts screaming loudly as if he is in a nightmare. This unexpected behavior surprises both Baobao and the zombies. Baobao feels exhausted from the fight and flees from the scene. As a result, the zombies turn their attention to Solon. Baobao later met a man and informed him about the recent events, including the attack on John Schillen's corpse, Solon's presence, and the zombie outbreak. The man scolds her for bringing an innocent boy into danger. Suddenly, lightning strikes the cemetery and they quickly rush towards the location only to find the zombies have been burnt to ashes. After a few days, Solon returns to college, attempting to put the events of the village out of his mind and concentrate on his studies. However, unexpectedly, Baobao appears beside him. Solon is having trouble concentrating due to Baobao sitting next to him. He decides to ask her directly what she wants, but Baobao asks him to wait until they are outside as she is paying attention to the lecture. Once they are outside, Solon tries to scare her by threatening to report her to the police, but Baobao remains unaffected. Baobao confesses that she wants Solon to be her servant, but first, she demands to see the same power that he had used to defeat the zombies. Solon chooses to play dumb, prompting Baobao to reveal her hidden knife and lunge at him. However, Solon's instincts kick in, and he creates distance between them, remembering his grandfather's advice to keep his abilities hidden. Baobao is surprised by Solon's newfound strength and potential as he unleashes his technique, causing the aura around him to change. Excited, Baobao continues to attack him, demonstrating her exceptional knife skills, but Solon's mastery of the Kinku technique allows him to defend himself with ease. With his speed as an advantage, Solon takes the offense and catches Baobao off guard. The battle intensifies as the two opponents go back and forth, but ultimately Solon manages to gain the upper hand. Elsewhere, a group of villains known as Zensei have obtained the body of John Schillen, a renowned martial artist. A young boy inspects the corpse but is unable to find what he is searching for. Disappointed, he instructs the zombie user who delivered the corpse that she has another opportunity to be of use by capturing Solon next. Meanwhile, as the fight between Solon and Baobao continues, Solon finds himself overpowered and ultimately defeated. Baobao strips Solon of his clothes, leaving him naked and vulnerable. Baobao reveals that she was only holding back because she wants him to become her servant. Upon refusing to do so, Baobao threatens to expose the fact that Solon has never slept with anyone in the school, which is confirmed by a seal on his manhood. Frustrated and cornered, Solon eventually gives in to her demands and swears loyalty to her. At night, Solon is depressed that his life has fallen apart, so he doesn't hang out with his roommates. After they leave, he gets a friend request from a cute girl, so he gets excited while chatting. She reveals that she is a sophomore and asks him out on a date. The next day, Baobao informs him she wants to introduce him to someone later. He then tells her he had something important to do, but she pays a deaf ear. In the evening, Solon turns off his phone so he can focus on his date with Yanyan. Luckily, she looks just like her photos. She suggests they go to a nice restaurant and have a good time. Meanwhile, Baobao becomes angry that Solon has turned off his phone and orders Shusan to track his location. When Solon and Yanyan finish eating, it's past curfew, so she invites him to stay at her apartment. While they are alone, Solon is visibly nervous when Yanyan makes the first move on him, but Solon experiences a massive amount of pain from his seal since the two have made contact. He asks about her evil intentions from the girl, which makes her reveal her true nature as the zombie master. Yanyan, the zombie master, implanted a parasite in Solon's head, preventing him from using his Kinko ability. The zombies capture and knock him out, while Baobao and Shusan chases after him using a tracking device. Later, Yanyan offers Solon to Lu, and in exchange, he'll let her join their organization. Xiahe begins to play with Solon's body, but Lu intervenes. Lu tells Solon that they are in search of his grandfather's legacy, but Solon claims to have no knowledge of it. Lu then attempts to use his ability to read Solon's soul, which is an extremely painful process. However, Shusan and Baobao interrupt the process, saving Solon from further harm. Xiahe and Lu are aware of the danger and are ready to fight. Yanyan summons a large group of zombies from the earth, signaling the start of the battle. Shusan tries to attack with a rock, but Xiahe easily breaks it with her impressive strength. Baobao quickly charges forward and engages in combat with Xiahe and the zombies, skillfully wielding her knives. Xiahe makes a sudden attack towards Baobao, but Shusan comes to her rescue just in time. While they are momentarily distracted, their ally Yuan takes Solon underground. Xiahe realizes what's happening and uses her strength to bring them back to the surface, but accidentally hits them away instead of catching them. Once Solon is safe, Baobao stabs him and kills the parasite, stopping him from using his powers. Shusan reveals that he had a group of comrades hidden nearby the whole time. Outnumbered and defeated, all three of them decide to retreat and wrap things up. Baobao notices that Solon seems upset, and when she asks him what's wrong, he admits that he's always had bad luck with girls. However, instead of offering him encouragement, Baobao tells him that he's not cursed with bad luck, but with stupidity. She goes on to say that he has nothing appealing about him as a real man, which only makes Solon feel worse. As the chase continues, Lu and Yanyan are still being pursued by Shusan's comrades. One of them is strong enough to nearly stop the van, but Lu sucks up his strength by using his technique. In the heat of the moment, Yanyan nearly falls off the car and pleads for help, but unfortunately, she is left behind. The next day, Solon is depressed in his room when Baobao cuts open his room door and takes Solon to her workplace, Express Delivery, where they meet Shusan. Shusan introduces himself and explains to Solon that everyone in the company is an outsider. He goes on to clarify that outsiders are humans who have special powers and can control a unique type of energy known as Ki. Shusan gives Solon some insight into the world of outsiders and reveals the difference between a normal human and an outsider as they enter a prison. While they are talking, they meet and try interrogating Yanyan, who had been captured after falling from a runway van. Shusan scolds Yanyan for trying to join a group she knows nothing about. Yanyan expresses her negative thoughts for the express delivery guys because they act superior to everyone, including her famous family Liu. Shusan demands that Yanyan share any information she gathered while with Zensei in exchange for a less severe punishment. Yanyan refuses to share any information with Shusan and instead narrates that she spent 15 years training in isolation with corpses. After completing her training, she was told that she couldn't use her powers in public freely. This is why she decided to join Zensei, an organization that allows her members to use her powers. While speaking, a man named Shusi appears and pushes Shusan away, suggesting using force to make Yanyan talk. He becomes so aggressive and keeps kicking her ruthlessly that Yanyan becomes terrified of him. However, Solon intervenes by activating his technique and tells Shusi to stop, saying that he is the one affected by Yanyan's actions. Upon hearing this, Shusan agrees, but Shusi does not. As a result, both of them begin to bicker. After seeing Solon's attitude and seeing him stand up for her, Yanyan reveals that Zensei is after John Shilin's legacy. She explains that in the past, John Shilin single-handedly battled countless Zensei members and left with only a scratch. This is why Zensei became interested in his Ki Taigen fighting style. On their way out, Solon notices that Yuan is tied up in a cell and screaming for women. Shusan explains that while rescuing Solon, he was touched by Xiahe and has been hypnotized by her powers. Fortunately, the effects will wear off after 3 to 4 days. At the office, Shusan invites Solon to join their organization and fight for them, but Solon immediately refuses. However, Shusan signals Baobao and she begins to beat up Solon, forcing him to sign the contract. Later that night, Solon hears a noise outside. When he opens the door, suddenly he is kidnapped by a strange doll. The doll takes him to its master, a little girl who seems interested to see Solon, but Solon jumps out of the bag and prepares to attack them. However, the group of two girls stops and informs him that they are not from Zensei. Meanwhile, Shusi reveals that he's interested to see Solon's fate. However, he's going to face much more difficulties moving forward. Both of the girls ask Solon to meet with the chairman of their organization, making him feel important. However, another group called Tenshifu intervenes and invites Solon to meet their master instead. This is because Zensei has spread a rumor that Solon is the heir to the Ki-Taigen style of fighting, which is said to be the most insane fighting style ever. When Solon refuses to go with Tenshifu, both parties begin fighting. As Solon activates his Kinku technique, it turns out his opponent is also using the same technique. Solon then faces off with the two disciples, and after some exchanges, they fall back having assessed that his technique is related to their school. Meanwhile, Baobao wakes up from her sleep due to a feeling of intense bloodlust in the air. She decides to investigate and discovers a woman named Feng Shan, who warns her that the Tenkikai group will be taking over Solon soon. Shan advises Baobao to stay away from any activities related to outsiders. However, Baobao chooses to ignore the warning and attempts to leave, which causes Shan to attack her. During their fight, they both sense a strong ki energy emanating from a distance and decide to rush towards it. The captain, John Lingyu, then steps in and belittles Solon. Solon gets really angry and attacks his opponent, but his opponent, who has a powerful defense called Kinku, was able to withstand his continuous attack. Lingyu then used his Kinku to strike Solon with one blow, surprisingly knocking him down. Despite Lingyu's subordinates warning Solon that he might get seriously hurt, Solon still wants to keep fighting and provokes Lingyu to finish him. Baobao arrives at the scene and noticed that Solon was not thinking rationally, so she gives him a slap to get him back on track. Solon then reveals another technique called Reihu, which surrounds Solon's body with white lightning, greatly increasing his strength and speed. Solon's fellow disciples are shocked to see that he has mastered such a powerful technique that only a select few in their clan could perform. With this newfound power, Solon is able to corner Lingyu in the battle, and decides to finish things off. However, Lingyu counters his attack with a similar technique, easily overpowering Solon. Baobao stepped in and dispersed the technique, ending the battle. After the battle, Lingyu acknowledged Solon's skills and invited him to their temple, where a tournament would be held to choose a successor. He even admitted that Solon had the potential to become their master. The following day, Baobao brings Solon to a villa where they are expected to train together for a month, so Solon can fight in Tenshifu tournament and become their successor. During their time there, Baobao gets very close to Solon and transfers her energy directly into him, causing him to overflow with his ki. When Solon wakes up, Baobao reveals that she has imprinted her technique into his brain and encourages him to start training immediately. While training, Solon becomes distracted by Baobao's attractive appearance, but Baobao discovers that his seal is obstructing his progress. She brings in prostitutes to help solve the problem, which makes Solon feel disrespected and insulted. As a result, he decides to quit training abruptly, even though Baobao warns him against leaving. Nonetheless, he sticks to his decision and departs from the villa. Solon meets Feng Shan on the way and accepts her invitation to ride with her. Upon reaching their destination, Solon is introduced to Feng Shan's father, who in turn introduces him to Jia Jiamu, a foreigner and another outsider. Meanwhile, Baobao is feeling down and sad because Solon has left her. In an attempt to cheer her up and make her more attractive to Solon, Shusan and Shusai encourage Baobao to get dressed up and look sexy. However, just as Baobao is starting to feel better and apologize for any mistakes she made, Yanyan enters the scene. Yanyan has started working for express delivery and decides to help Baobao get ready and transform into a beautiful and respectable woman. Later, Feng Chanhao reveals to Solon that he will be delighted if Solon works for him, and also wants him to marry his daughter, and concludes that there was a war in the Outsiders Society a long time ago, which was fought over the acquisition of 8 specific powers that were possessed by some of the Outsiders. Among those powers was Zhang Shilin's Ki-Taigen style and Chanhao grandfather's channeling technique. According to Chanhao, both he and Solon need to collaborate in order to solve the enigma of the 8 powers, which is the root cause of the ongoing conflicts. Chanhao suggests that he can give a response later and urges Solon to take some rest. The next day, Solon is focusing on Baobao's technique, which made him admire her, but it seems like he is still mad at her. At that moment, Cheyenne walks in with a masseuse and praises Solon for his dedicated training. Meanwhile, Baobao appears at the company premises dressed elegantly and inquires about Solon at the reception. Unfortunately, the receptionist denies her permission to enter and some guards take her away forcibly, causing them to break their arms in the process. At the same time, Solon confides in Cheyenne that he is not interested in joining their group as he feels remorseful for leaving Baobao behind, who had been taking care of him all along. Meanwhile, as Baobao searches for Solon, she comes across the top 4 outsiders of the association. When she requests to meet Solon, the first fighter launches an attack at her. However, Baobao skillfully dodges the attack and knocks out the first fighter. Even when the other 2 fighters gang up on her, they are no match for her expertise. Witnessing her incredible strength, the association leader becomes terrified and decides against engaging in a fight with her. Cheyenne discloses to Solon that if he joins the association, he will have the chance to date her, and that she is willing to accept him as a virgin. Cheyenne tries to seduce Solon, claiming that she is willing to choose him for the sake of her father. Solon becomes excited at the prospect of losing his virginity, but Cheyenne suddenly punches him, sending him flying into the hallway. Cheyenne then discovers that Baobao has infiltrated the building. As Solon attempts to flee, Cheyenne uses her teleportation power to strike him from a distance, revealing her true strength. Solon tries to fight back, but Cheyenne easily defeats him using her teleportation ability. Cheyenne advises Solon to reconsider Chanho's offer, but Solon stands up and proposes a wager, as he knows he cannot win the fight. Solon suggests that if he can break through Cheyenne's technique, she must let him go. Meanwhile, Baobao arrives on the next floor and encounters Jia Zhongbu waiting for her. In the midst of their battle, Jia Zhongbu manages to match Baobao's skills and even successfully dodges one of her attacks. When Baobao makes a mistake with her landing, Zhongbu seizes the chance to strike her with a powerful blow. He gains an upper hand by using his Kai technique, which can cause harm to his opponent even when blocked. However, Baobao asks for a short break because she feels numb and hits her head on the ground. Despite her condition, she decides to resume the fight. This time, Zhonggu unleashes a hidden weapon against Baobao. Even though she avoids it skillfully, she still suffers some harm since Zhonggu can manipulate the weapon using telekinesis. As the fight progresses, Baobao continues to dodge Zhonggu's assaults, but fails to inflict any damage on him. So she decides to take things seriously by taking off her heels. Meanwhile, Solon and Cheyenne resume their fight. This time, Solon manages to block all of Cheyenne's attacks with his new technique called White Bed Bug. Consequently, he emerges as the victor and Cheyenne honors their wager by releasing him. The fight between Baobao and Zhonggu takes a dramatic turn after Baobao takes off her heels. When the chairman arrives, Zhong realizes that losing in front of him would damage his reputation. He tries to intimidate Baobao by offering to spare her life if she grovels before him. However, Baobao turns the tables on him, making him kneel before her instead. In a fit of rage, Zhonggu attacks Baobao, but she expertly dodges his blows and uses her heels to inflict a severe injury to his head. Just as she calls out to the chairman, Solon falls from the upper floor. Baobao apologizes for everything she has done to him and begs him to return home with her. Solon is surprised by Baobao's sudden change of behavior, as she is typically rude, but realizes that forgiving her easily will make him sound like a simp. So he advises her not to move from her place as a punishment, and he goes to inform the chairman that he wants to leave. The chairman is enraged and attempts to attack Solon, but he prevents Baobao from getting involved. Just as the chairman is about to land a punch, he stops and reveals that he was merely testing Solon. He allows him to leave, but Zhonggu is still fuming from his humiliation. In a fit of anger, he attacks Baobao, who doesn't try to dodge and ends up getting hurt. However, she remains still and honors her promise to Solon. Baobao is losing a significant amount of blood, causing Solon to panic. The president steps in to assess the situation and asks his son to take over. The son then uses a unique technique to take control of the soul of one of the best surgeons in history and begins to provide Baobao with first aid treatment. Shortly after this, Shusan and Shusi arrive where the incident is taking place. They ask for the treatment to be stopped as they want to take care of the Baobao themselves. They also request that Chanhao arrange a car for them so they can leave. While they are in the car, Shusi informs Solon that Baobao is actually just resting and not in serious danger. Solon notices that her bleeding has stopped on its own, which confuses him. He asks Shusi for a more detailed explanation to understand what happened, but both Shusi and Shusan reveal that she has lost her memories and they are still in the process to look into her past. Elsewhere, Xia has taken control of 2 members of the Tenchifu school, a father and his son. The 2 members begin fighting with each other to gain Xia's attention. However, Xia requests both of them to participate in the tournament as her spies. Meanwhile, another member arrives and they all go to a room where Liu reveals that he has successfully extracted John Shilin's memories. He hands over the piece containing the memories to Schumann, but Schumann finds nothing interesting in it. However, according to Liu, the information obtained from the extracted memories can be useful and comes up with an evil plan. The following day, Solon is sitting next to Baobao in the villa. She is still unconscious, and Shusan and Shusi arrive to tell Solon to leave for college and assure him of her safety. As Solon is leaving, Baobao finally regains consciousness. While wandering around in the woods, Solon notices that Lu is spying on him. Suddenly, Solon appears behind Lu. Lu begs him not to fight and asks for a glimpse of his grandfather's memories. When Lu hands over the memory piece to Solon, he leaves him to do whatever he wants with it. As soon as Solon observes the memory orb, he becomes confused as the person he saw in the memory is Baobao, looking the same as she does presently. He receives a call from Shusan, and he heads to the hospital to find a man who they introduce as their father, Cho. More importantly, Solon asks Baobao if she killed his grandfather, to which she responds in the affirmative. Solon becomes instantly enraged upon hearing that Baobao killed his grandfather, but Cho calms him down by promising to explain everything. Cho begins to tell his story, starting from 1944 when two miners found Baobao alone in the forest. One of the miners tried to take advantage of her, but luckily a couple arrived just in time to save her and take her to their home. They introduced her to Cho, their son, and after a while, she began living with them in the village. The villagers started calling her by the name of Amu, and Cho reveals that unlike him, Amu was much more intelligent and could learn things easily. One day, Amu states that her real name is Feng Baobao. While working in the woods some days later, Cho's mother asks Amu to remember something from her past. However, as she tries to do so, Amu experiences a severe headache. Cho's mother asks him to run and get a doctor, and when he arrives with the doctor, they are surprised to find Amu in a calm state. The doctor states that Amu is an outsider with special powers and advises them to keep it a secret. Later in the night, Amu also detects Ki in Cho and helps him to control. For several days, both of them practice their ability to control Ki. Years later, bandits attacked the village and everyone was held hostage. Baobao arrived and didn't know what was going on. The ruthless bandits took an interest in her, but Cho's father begged for her life on her behalf. The bandits, however, killed him, and when Cho ran at them, they knocked him down too. Although she didn't understand what was happening, she got hurt after seeing Cho's mother in tears. Baobao then asks what would make Cho's mother happy, so she screams that she wants all the bandits dead. To carry out her wish, Baobao goes on a killing spree and in the blink of an eye, finishes off all the bandits. Although she saved the villagers, it got scared and drove her out. As she heads out, Cho and his mother promise to accompany her in finding her family and ask her to wait. However, Cho's mother changes her plan and leaves Baobao behind in the woods alone. After a few years, Cho, who is now 56 years old, becomes frantic when he finds a photo of Baobao on the streets of the city. Baobao is now homeless and vulnerable, and a woman lures her with the promise of shelter. However, Baobao is taken captive and thrown into a cell to be sold off. Initially, the customers show no interest in her, but things change when one of them discovers that she is an outsider, which is what Cho has been searching for. Eventually, they take Baobao to meet Cho, who weeps upon seeing her condition. Afterward, Baobao is offered a job at an express delivery company. One day, Cho and Baobao receive information about a meeting with some clan heads, so they decide to attend in hopes that someone would recognize Baobao. When they arrive at the location, they find that everyone is already dead. As they move forward, they witness the last man standing being taken down by John Shilin. Upon seeing Baobao, John Shilin recognizes her immediately, but he doesn't have enough time to explain her past to her. Instead, he begs her to protect his grandson as it is the only way to get closer to her true identity. Before he dies, he asks Baobao to end his life and she agrees. John Shilin then transfers his technique to her so she can pass it on to Solon when the time comes. Immediately after the transfer, his injury begins advancing rapidly and Baobao puts an end to his pain. Solon is struggling to come to terms with everything he has learned about his family's past. Cho promises to share more about Solon's grandfather and father, who were once high-ranking members of the Tenchifu clan. Cho encourages Solon to compete in the Raiten Teishu tournament to meet the current leader of the Tenchifu clan. However, Cho suddenly starts coughing and realizes that his time is coming to an end. Baobao, who is by his side, sings a song that was once sung by Cho's mother. After Cho's funeral, Solon approaches Baobao and asks her to train him for the tournament.